constructive conversations.
No, they were productive.
Yeah, we were off.
Yeah.
And
he just said his perspective was like you guys went there, like you had the conversation, like, hey, we really need to kind of have a different mindset of how we approach the car. And then the next week it was Darlington, and that kind of helped.
When we won that one. That's a solid point. I'll agree with him on that. I'd agree with him on that for sure.
So what was that like though, coming out of Dover for you guys?
It was definitely our most trying weekend of the year for sure. Definitely our most challenging one, which Dover's been challenging for years. So we definitely had a lot of conversations on not only just the car, but just us as a team and all that. And then the next week we got the pole and won the race. It's funny. Our sport just goes up and down so fast. It's a roller coaster. More so this year than ever. Like, as quickly as it goes up and down this year, it's just nuts.
That's what he did. He said it was like incredibly productive though. Like he walked out of there and it was like, we needed this. This was great. And,
yeah.
It's like we can kind of galvanizing in a way.
That's good to hear. I didn't know he thought that way.
Yeah.
That was good to know. Thanks for the therapy session.
Did NASCAR send a message? Have they sent messages the last 2 weeks to, with the penalty on Cole and the penalty on Bubba, kind of what's acceptable and what's not?
Yeah, I would say so. I would. I think there's a few things that kind of go to all that stuff, right? Is on, what's acceptable to NASCAR, what's acceptable to you as an individual. Those type of things are probably, I always say sports test your morals and test your character a lot of times, and it sometimes it's tough to balance all that in the heat of the moment. It's hard, right? It's hard. It's hard to imagine yourself inside of a race car if you haven't done it before, and you sometimes make decisions that you're not proud of later on, but you learn lessons every time, right? I've made mistakes and made dumb decisions inside race cars that I regret, but I've learned from every one of them, and I feel like I really know where my line is now 15 years later, but I gotta know where my line is and what I feel is acceptable or not on the racetrack.
Well, you might know the line, but when you have the helmet on,
I still feel like I kind of know the line.
You still know the line.
Yeah.
It's not like you're just in the moment and just.
Yeah, I feel like you learn where that is by either experiencing it yourself and going through it, which is not fun, or watching others, right? And that's kind of how we learn, is by experience, right? And so it's either watching others' experiences or your own throughout it. Yep.
Do you feel like NASCAR may have kind of started a precedent at some point with this suspension? Because it's been a while since a driver was suspended for an infraction or retaliation on the track. I think Iowa was the last one, actually, several years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I said there's a line between boys have at it and we've gone way too far, right? Like, it's one thing that, someone knocks you out of the way, you knock them back out of the way. Okay, that's one thing. It's different if someone, pushes you up a little bit and then you right rear hook them into the wall at 180 miles an hour. Car that we've already had some concerns about here recently. That's a different story. So there's a line, right? Like it's NASCAR's like your parents a lot of times, right? There's like a line of, you gotta let the boys figure it out sometimes, and they'll figure it out together and move on. Or mom and dad have to step in a little bit and control the situation because it's gotten out of hand, right? Like, so I believe NASCAR kind of decided that was a little getting out of hand, and I would agree with them.
There seems to be a lot of mutual respect between you and Ross, like based on what you guys were saying last week. And hearing his kind of journey, if you will, this year, kind of upsetting the apple cart, the old guard. I'm wondering if you can relate to that at all, and if you've kind of noticed that there's maybe some similarities between kind of what he's gone through or going through and maybe what you went through at one point.
I think there's some similarities. There's something. We're different people.
Sure.
Don't get me wrong. Like, I mean, we're both aggressive racers. Okay, we both got here in completely different ways. We both had different upbringings. Like, we're not like the same. It's kind of hard to say that. But is there some comparisons there? I'm sure there is. And I think Ross is finding his balance. Right. I mean, this is the first time he's consistently run up front and has a real chance of winning a championship. I remember that stage of my career, right? Different ages, different things, all that. But I remember that stage of my career, and I remember making some mistakes and having to pay for it, and learning some lessons the hard way. I could see that he's gone through that this year, right? There's nothing wrong with that. Like he's, but he's. I feel like I can relate a lot into a lot of those situations. Yes.
When the sport has had this week all the attention on obviously with Bubba and just kind of that hard racing in general, does that mean you come in this week and you expect everyone to be a little bit more chill, or what does it kind of do to the vibe of everything, so to speak?
I mean, it definitely has an effect on the field somehow. I do think the intensity of the playoffs and what's on the line, you're not going to see less of an aggression level on the racetrack. I think everyone's still going to be pretty aggressive trying to pass guys and to cut it close. I think there's going to be a lot of slide jobs this weekend, like those type of things. I think all that's not going to change, right? But it is interesting. Like if you go back to Talladega and how that was one of the most tame super speedway races we've ever had after an injury, after a meeting, after all, and apparently it has an effect on the field, like somehow. I don't think last week's penalty has much of an effect on how we raced this weekend. It does on retaliation, I'm sure, which I hope it does, but I don't think anything else changes on this one.
What's kind of to follow up on Holly's question? Is it a little bit frustrating to you that it has been the storyline all week? It's going to be the storyline tomorrow until somebody crosses the finish line. Does it take away from what the playoffs are supposed to be? It's supposed to be 8 guys battling for 4 spots.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's multiple stories all the time, right? There's always different stories, and this year we've had more stories in our sport than we've ever had, right? Like, yeah, we have the racing on the track, we have the stories off the track, we got this typical silly season stuff that was pretty interesting this year. Like, there's been a ridiculous amount of stories for you guys this year. I don't know how we can add more. And then you have something like last weekend on top of it all. I mean, there's plenty of stories to talk about. I don't think that's a bad thing for the sport in general, right? I mean, like it's not boring right now. I can tell you that much. So that's good. That's a good thing.
Have you ever given Ross any advice or feedback or anything?
No.
No.
No, I mean we've had a couple conversations, but nothing about for him this year. Nah. I mean, if he reached out, I'd talk to him. But sure. I mean, he's a big boy. He knows what to do.
Does Bubba owe the field anything? Does he hey, I screwed up? Anything like that where I won't, this isn't going to happen again, or is?
I ain't looking for that. Nah. I mean, it's kind of all in front of us. We all see. Nah, I'm not looking for anything there. Didn't do it to me. If he did it to me, yeah, we have some really big issues. We'd have some big problems, but not. No, I'm not. He's not going to owe me anything.
So going into next week, we've got Martinsville, which is known for as a track to mete out some punishment to people you owe retaliation to. Have you ticked anybody off? Or are you worried? I mean, you're in the playoffs, so it doesn't really matter. But
I'm good. I told everyone last week. I said no one's mad at me. We're in the championship 4, and I didn't tick anyone off. How great is this? So it's a unique spot.
It's got to be a first.
Kind of like it. This is nice.
Literally just as a Sunday drive for you tomorrow then.
I mean, no, because we still want to win. Right? There's still a trophy to grab. We still want to, continue to keep the momentum that we have on our race team, and we don't want to lay down on race day. I will say that our preparation has been geared more towards Phoenix over the next 2 races, because we should do that, because that's the advantage we earned. But for racing for the championship, but at the same time, when we get to the weekend and we're here, it's 100% on Miami for the next few days until we get out of here, and then it's whatever on the next one, right? Like that's kind of where we're at. So there's some risks that we can take from a setup perspective that we otherwise would be nervous to take, because if something goes wrong or we don't run well, oh well, right? Like, oh well, but we can learn something for races coming up next year even, right? Because we don't have practices. There's no tests scheduled right now in the off season. So this is your moment to learn with really not much risk, right? When else do you get to do that? Hardly ever, right? Maybe the All-Star race, but even then you still want to win $1 million. So this is like, yeah, I want to win the trophy, but let's try to learn even more for tomorrow or for next year.
What's it like to go to Martinsville next week, where you that race typically tends to be chaotic and not have to worry about anything, and you can just kind of.
It's nice. It feels good, right? I mean, it's nice to have that feeling, but as much as you think that feels great, the pressure's still on, and you want to keep that on. Like you don't want to get soft over the next 2 weeks and just be like, relaxed and having fun and all that. Like you want to keep the intensity level up, like you're still in the playoffs, or you're still going on. Because when you get to Phoenix, you need to be ready. So, I don't see us backing down. And when we won, and I think I saw Paul smile once, and then that pretty much was gone, and it was focused on next week already, and Phoenix immediately. So it's great because you're in, but it's just a stepping stone, right? That's all Vegas was. It's just another step to the goal.
But you did have fun this week. You went to a hockey game. You kind of chilled out a little bit. So,
I mean, I always have fun. I always smile. I still love my job. Don't get me wrong. I still have fun. But yeah, I mean, we've had more meetings about Phoenix than being this early than I thought we would have, and we got a lot of them scheduled for the next few weeks. I'm just making sure we're prepared for it and ready for everything that comes our way.
Who won the hockey game? Who won the hockey game?
I left at the second period, if I'm being honest. I had a lot of fun there, but I had to get a little rest. Listen, I don't get a bunch of sleep at home, so the racetrack is kind of my moment to get sleep these days, and I wasn't wasting that opportunity. All right. Thanks, guys.
Jared Haas with Frontstretch.com. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. Also, check one of those 2 videos out that we have right beside you. Visit Frontstretch.com for more great content.